Start with the prayers.
वन्दे गुरु परम्पराम्
सरस्वती Om Namah Shivaya.
Om Namah Shivaya.
Om Namah Shivaya.
Okay. So, what were we talking about? Fourfold qualifications. By now, I think all of you know this. Vivekaha, Vairagya, Samadhi, Shat Sampatti, and Mumukshutvam. And under Shat Sampatti, how many are there?
6.
And they are Shama, Dama, Uparamaha, Titiksha, Shraddha. Until here we saw in the last class. And today we have to see the last one, which is Samadhanam. Okay. So I will mute everybody, then we will start. Okay. So we saw till Shraddha in the last class. And as you remember, Shraddha is having faith or trust on the scriptural teaching. And is it blind faith? No, it is faith that is backed with logic. It is faith that Shastra is a pramanam for revealing Atmajnanam. Okay, so till Shraddha we saw, and now we will see Samadhanam, the last one. So the student of Tattva Bodha is asking, Samadhanam kim? What is Samadhanam? And the teacher answers, Chitta Ekagrata. So that is actually 2 words and it breaks as Chitta Ekagrata. Chitta Ekagrata. Chitta means the mind. Ekagrata means one-pointed or concentration. Having a one-pointed mind is Samadhanam. So it is basically the concentration or the focusing power of the mind. Now, an important question should come. What should I concentrate on? Okay, concentration is fine. I'm sure everyone can develop concentration. Even the badminton player has concentration, right? Without concentration, how can the badminton player play? So concentration, we all develop. In fact, we have all experienced concentration. When you're intensely doing some work or very involved in something you're doing, that is concentration. But here, what to concentrate on, right? It cannot just be any random thing. It has to be something. So what is that thing? So here, the concentration is on the goal of life. What is the goal of life for all of us? Moksha. So having moksha as the long-term goal of life and being aware, being concentrated on that goal, that is samadhanam. And since the long-term goal is moksha, what should the short-term be? Short-term goals be? The short-term goals have to be in line with the long-term goal, right? The short-term goal, only if you're in line, then you can move towards the long-term goal. In Bhagavad Gita, this was called as Vyavasayatmika buddhi. Right? So what does it mean? That having clarity where I am, where I want to go, what is the route to get there. This is Vyavasayatmika buddhi. So for us, we stand here, the goal is moksha. We know the road to moksha. And so all of our short-term goals, even the materialistic day-to-day activities that we do, they all have to be subservient to the higher goal of moksha. All of the smaller day-to-day things that we do, all of them must also move us in the direction of moksha. This is samadhanam. Okay, to give you an example, have you seen those dancers who dance with the pot on the head? They balance the pot and then sometimes even a flame. They balance a flame on the head and then they dance. And if you see them, they are dancing, the hands and legs, everything is moving. They're even spinning and doing all that. But the pot is always on the head. The pot doesn't, fall off. And for that, one part of their mind is always concentrating on the balance of this pot. So the hands and legs may be dancing and doing all that. But in the background, one part is always focused on this pot. It is always maintaining the balance. Because if they don't concentrate, what will happen? The pot will fall, right? So the same way for all of us, the pot on the head is the goal of moksha. And the hands and legs moving are all the day-to-day activities you do. So day-to-day activities we keep doing. We do all the different responsibilities. We do our job. We look after the children. All of this has to be done. But always in the background of the mind, you remember that the goal of life is moksha. And this concentration is samadhanam, having this focus. And because of this kind of prioritization, even your day-to-day activities, the way you decide things on a day-to-day basis, all of that also realigns itself. Because many times, in life, for example, I'll give you an example. It may happen that if you do some small adharmic thing, some small, slightly illegal thing, then you may be getting some big profit, let us say. The other option is do the dharmic thing and you will not get that monetary profit. Now, if your priority of life is moksha, you will naturally choose the dharmic thing. Why? Because you know that in order to reach moksha, I need chitta shuddhi. In order to get chitta shuddhi, I need to follow certain dharmic lifestyle, right? Otherwise, chitta shuddhi is not going to come. So naturally, you will choose the dharmic thing. Otherwise, what happens? The mind gets tempted. It gets distracted. And you may choose the adharmic thing just for profits. So now your day-to-day decisions have naturally realigned simply because your priority of life has changed. Your priority of life is no longer materialistic things like money, wealth. Most of the time, for most people, they are very concentrated on wealth creation, but as seekers, we are concentrated on moksha. That doesn't mean that we will not work to earn money or anything like that. It is with the understanding that if I don't have money, what happens? It becomes a source of distraction. It becomes a source of worry for me. Right? Not having money is a worrying thing. It makes life difficult. So with this understanding, I work to earn money. But on the other hand, what is the other understanding? If I have too much money, that is also a source of distraction, right? That will also not let you concentrate on moksha. So we earn money to be comfortable so that we don't have to worry about money. So that once you stop worrying about those things, there is enough mental space left to concentrate on moksha. So that is the idea. So this short-term goal is subservient to the long-term goal. Okay, so this is samadhanam, chitta ekagrata. I will just unmute you, and if you have any questions, we can discuss. Yes.
Ma'am, here the Samadhanam, is it somewhere related to the Samadhi state? Just a curiosity.
No, not in this case.
It's explained very well.
Okay, so no further questions. Shall we move on? Okay, so I will mute everyone again and we'll see the next one, which is Mumukshutvam. Okay, so now the question asked by the student is Mumukshutvam Kim. Mumukshutvam Kim. What is Mumukshutvam? So now if you remember, we are on the fourth point. Till now, we were in the subheadings of the third point. With Samadhanam, the sixth subheading under the third one was over. And now we are in the fourth and last point. Okay. So, which is Mumukshutvam. Student has asked, what is Mumukshutvam? And the teacher replies, Moksho me bhuyad iti ichha. Ichha means a desire. So the desire that I want moksha, that let me have moksha. That is the meaning of moksho me bhuyad. Let me have moksha. This desire is called mumukshutvam. Okay, the desire is called mumukshutvam, and the person who has this desire is called a mumukshuhu. So the desire and desirer, mumukshutvam, mumukshuhu. Now, this mumukshutvam is probably the single most important of the sadhana chatushtayan. Okay, they're all important and they're all necessary. But if you had to pinpoint one and say this is the most important, then that one is mumukshutvam. Why? Because without mumukshutvam, you will never see the value of this study. If there is no appreciation for this subject, for the study, for moksha, then why will anybody ever spend their effort going through this? Right? So how does one get the value for this subject and for what we are studying here? This comes only when you realize the limitation of the material world. Only when you realize that there is some defects in the material world and in all these material things that I am acquiring, there is some inadequacy, something incomplete, something is not sufficient here. Only when that realization comes, then only you will think, okay, there must be something more to life. And that is the beginning. That is the beginning of mumukshutvam. And that pursuit will take you deeper and deeper. So mumukshutvam is a very important, necessary quality. Only when you realize the depth of the problem, you will have any appreciation for the solution. It's like the common example of the medicine. We don't appreciate medicines until we fall sick. The day you fall sick, then you start thinking, oh, I'm so grateful for these medicines. They make me feel better. But otherwise, do we even think about medicines? No, right? So only when there is a problem, then you appreciate the value of the solution. So only first you have to realize that there is a problem, right? And actually it is for this reason that you don't find Vedanta classes being marketed or advertised, because mumukshutvam can never be imposed from outside. Mumukshutvam can never come from an external agent. The person has to themselves realize that something is missing and I have to search now. It has to come from within. And what is that realization? The realization of the limitation of the material world. So to give you an example, our funny example of the cardboard chair. So imagine there is a cardboard chair. Okay. And this cardboard chair, it looks like a real chair. You can place it with the rest of your furniture. You can even put cushions on it and decorate it and do whatever you want with it. What is the only thing you should not do with a cardboard chair? You shouldn't sit on it. It will collapse under your weight, right? Because it doesn't have the strength to take. Cardboard chair is a weak material, right? So if you sit on it, it will break, it will collapse. Now, when it comes to the world, we have to treat this whole world like a cardboard chair. Okay, so the world is there. It is nice to look at. You can do anything you want with it transactionally. You can decorate it, you can laugh at it, you can cry at it, you can do whatever. What is the only thing you should not do with the world? You should not emotionally lean on the world. If you emotionally lean on the world, then it is like sitting on the cardboard chair. Just like how the cardboard chair cannot support the weight, the world cannot be trusted to secure your emotions. It is not possible for the world to satisfy you or to give you security, emotional security. And that is why you cannot lean on the world for your emotional fulfillment. The world will definitely disappoint. And once you realize this, then you have to ask the question, then where can I lean to get my emotional fulfillment? And then we come to Vedanta. Okay, so this understanding and this desire that I want moksha and I want to be independent of this emotional leaning, I want to be free from this emotional slavery. I don't want to be constantly dependent, psychologically dependent on the world for my happiness. This is mumukshutvam, having this strong desire for moksha. And initially, for everyone, it starts as a weak desire. And you have to feed it, you have to nurture it, you have to grow it. And then it becomes an intense desire. And that intense desire will definitely take you where you should go. Okay, so having the desire for moksha, what happens? Only when you have that desire, you work on getting the qualifications needed for this study. And once you have the qualifications, then what happens? You can work on getting self-knowledge. And once there is self-knowledge, it is moksha. So once you have self-knowledge, there's nothing more that needs to be worked on as such, okay? Because this self-knowledge is itself moksha. That 100% assimilation of the self-knowledge of the jnanam, that is moksha. Okay, so with this we have finished mumukshutvam also. And the author also gives his concluding remarks. He says, Etat sadhana chatushtayam. Therefore, this is sadhana chatushtaya, the fourfold qualifications. Tatas tattva vivekasyadhikarino bhavanti. And this word breaks, it's a compound word. It breaks as tataha, therefore, tattva vivekasya adhikarino bhavanti. And therefore, the one who has this sadhana chatushtaya, he is a adhikari for tattva viveka. Tattva viveka is atma jnanam, self-knowledge. So the one who has all these fourfold qualifications, he is adhikari. Adhikari means eligible, qualified, ready, prepared. Okay, so he is adhikari for tattva viveka, for atma jnanam. All right, so now understand very carefully what that means. It doesn't mean that just because somebody doesn't have the qualification, that they are not allowed to sit in the class. What it means is that even if they come and sit in the class without the proper level of readiness, the knowledge will not work on them. It will not give them what it is supposed to do. Okay, so it is like throwing a seed on a dry land. Is it the seed's fault that it won't grow if you throw it on the dry land? No, it is because the land is not ready, right? That soil has to be prepared. Then if you put the seed, it grows very nicely. So if you just put it on the dry land, the land is unprepared. It is unfit. And so in the same way, our minds have to be first prepared, have to be made fit through developing all these sadhana chatushtayam. And then when the knowledge comes, it is just like a seed coming into the fertile soil. There's nothing more you have to do. It will just blossom into a beautiful tree. Okay, so with this, we have completed the first chapter of Tattvabodha. This is the author's concluding remarks on the first chapter. And now we can pause for questions.
Om Medaji.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that we need to cultivate mumukshutvam and make it stronger. How do we cultivate it? How do we do it?
So if you don't, protect that small little flame of mumukshutvam, it will die out. So you have to kind of feed it. What do you feed it with? With the Shravanam Mananam. You have to continue to regularly attend the classes, be disciplined, stay with the subject, and it becomes stronger and stronger. And as the subject becomes stronger, your clinging to the material world weakens. You will yourself see that as time passes, you will see that the material world is not so meaningful. It is there and it is nice and that's okay, but it is not that fulfilling for you anymore. And that is when you know that the mumukshutvam is getting stronger and stronger. The external world stops satisfying you in that full way.
I think external
Oh,
world
Medaji.
doesn't provide peace of mind.
And that you have to realize.
Yes.
Everyone knows this, that the external world doesn't give you permanent happiness, but people still go back to it, which is a mistake.
Oh, Medaji, I would just like to add here. I feel that this constant remembrance, ki nitya anitya vastu vivek, if we constantly remember just that one line, probably then the mumukshutvam can continue, that flame can continue to burn if that's constantly in the mind, just that one line.
Yes, that is what Shravanam and Mananam also do, right? Repeatedly reinforce the same idea in your mind.
Thank you.
Medaji, but this is also a desire, right? Mumukshutva.
This is an okay desire in the spiritual path.
So it is like some people have more of this and some have less of this at birth, or it is depending on your environment that it gets stronger and stronger, or your purushartha is required in it.
It doesn't start strong for everybody in the beginning. In the very beginning, when you just start, it is not so strong. You have to make it strong by spending more time. You have to repeatedly question, what do you want finally from life? You have to ask yourself, you have to have the clarity. And through repeated questioning, you will find that the world doesn't satisfy you fully. You will yourself find yourself feeling incomplete no matter how many objects you have. Right? You can go on acquiring. You look at some of the richest people on the planet. They still exhibit the same behavior that I want more, I need to acquire more, which means what? They feel incomplete somewhere, right? And you have to question the root of this. And that is the beginning of this. And you have to slowly feed it. The priority doesn't come on day one. You have to little bit work on it. Otherwise, it doesn't grow.
Medaji, basic inclination towards this seems to be missing in many, even among our relatives, friends, as we see. So does it mean the prarabdham is the foremost which makes the inclination come into being, then the effort to do that?
See, they're all connected, okay? All this viveka, vairagya, mumukshutvam, everything, they're all connected. Somewhere, as you go through life, for a lot of people, they have still not realized. But
yeah,
for
that
some
is a
people,
fact. That is a fact. Many people are not, they think it's a waste of time. This is what they say.
yes, because they are still not, they think they are still happy with the material world.
Yeah.
And as long as they think they're happy with the material world, you can never convince them.
That is what happens. Yes.
So somewhere they have to learn the lesson that this is not sufficient. And it will come, because actually the material world is not sufficient, no? All the things are impermanent, they come, they go, you're left disappointed, you're left heartbroken. Death is something that is inescapable, that too, especially other people's death, which we have to experience and, face that loss.
So what I mean, the internal stirring from within doesn't happen to many people.
Not in this life, but it will happen slowly, slowly.
So it is, can I say like this, that your desire to get into this conversation, to get into this path, on this path, is not something which everybody can get it at the same time. Everyone has to mature to that different level to get into this.
Yes.
Perhaps your punyam takes care of all this. So if we continue to do punyam, good karmas, I'm sure someday we will reach there in that path, isn't it?
So just to confuse you a little more, I will tell you one more thing. In the final ultimate step, you have to let go of even mumukshutvam. Okay, that is way ahead. Right now, we need mumukshutvam simply so that we can come and sit in the class, at least, right? But in the final step, even mumukshutvam has to be let go of.
Because you have attained the Brahma. Realize that I am Brahma.
It is
So
like
there is no more desire.
it is
No
like
doer,
saying,
no doer, no doer.
okay, it is like saying, you see this? This is a pen in my hand, right? You all see this? Now I'm going to say, I desire this pen. I want this pen. So badly, I want this pen. What are you going to tell me?
You already have it.
I already have it. So is this even a desire? A valid desire? Right?
Once you have achieved the goal, then where is the
Pen is
goal?
already with me. How much? What? Nothing more about. No more desiring is going to change that, right? Because the pen is here in my hand. There's no further acquiring to be done. So the desire is itself invalid. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't matter. So that is the final step, which will come later. But for now, you need to have mumukshutvam. You need to hold on to that and you need to grow that flame. Convert it into a stronger and stronger desire. And you will see that as the mumukshutvam desire becomes stronger and stronger, the desire on the materialistic things will start to weaken because you have to make space. Once you start letting go a little bit of materialism, then this desire can become stronger and stronger. And when it is the most intense, then, you will do whatever it takes. Actually, nothing has to be done, but that comes later.
So, ma'am, somewhere had read that the next step is Atma Dhyanam. That's the 5th point. Is that right?
Which one? Sorry?
Atma Dhyanam. After Mumukshatvam, then the next stage will be Atma Dhyanam.
There are no stages in this. These are 4 qualifications, not stages.
So,
So
Nididhyasanam will be with what?
Nididhyasanam is after Shravanam and Mananam. First, Shravanam, that is listening to the knowledge. Second is Mananam, thinking about it and clearing your doubts. You have to have doubt-free knowledge. It is not sufficient to just have knowledge. You have to have totally doubtless knowledge. And then Nididhyasanam.
That's acting on the knowledge, Nididhyasanam.
Not acting on the knowledge. Nididhyasanam is assimilation of the knowledge. It is like, suppose you're making some coffee, okay, and you have put some sugar into a cup and then you pour the coffee. Now doubtlessly you have put sugar, right? Is there any doubt about putting the sugar?
No.
Is there any doubt that there is sugar in the cup? No, the sugar is definitely there. No doubt at all. And when you drink the coffee, it is not sweet. Why?
Sugar is less.
You have missed a step. You have forgotten to stir it, no?
Hmm.
Only after you stir the sugar, the coffee becomes
Yeah.
sweet. Otherwise, the sugar is just sitting at the bottom. So, doubtlessly, there is sugar. But do you experience the sweetness of that sugar? No. That is the difference between Mananam and Nididhyasanam. Mananam is having the knowledge, doubtlessly, but you are not able to experience the benefits of that knowledge. What is the benefits? Letting go of the worries, not having tension, having the happiness, the bliss, that has still not yet come. Why? Because assimilation has not yet happened. The stirring of the sugar into the coffee, the stirring of that knowledge, the assimilation of that knowledge, that has not yet happened. That is what is Nididhyasanam. Complete assimilation. Okay, so with this, we have finished the first chapter of Tattva Bodha, and now we will be moving on to the second chapter. Okay, so I will mute all of you. So now, if you remember the previous line, the ending line of the previous chapter, he says, tatas tattva vivekasya. This sadhana chatushtaya makes you adhikari for tattva viveka. And he doesn't explain what is tattva viveka. So I just translated it briefly as self-knowledge. Now, in the beginning of the second chapter, the student has caught hold of this tattva viveka word because that's a new word for him. He doesn't know what it means. And he asks, tattva vivekaha kaha. What is this tattva viveka? What is self-knowledge? And the teacher has given the answer in one line, and he says, Atma Satyam Tadanyat Sarvam Mithyeti. He says, Atma is Satyam, Tadanyat, everything else, Sarvam, everything, is Mithya. Mithyeti is actually Mithya iti, Mithyeti. So, the simple translation is Atma Satyam, Atma is Satyam, and Tadanyat, Tadanyat Sarvam, everything else is Mithya. Now, some new words have come into the picture. One word is Atma, one word is Satyam, and one word is Mithya. So 3 new words have come. Now, what is Atma? So we'll start with a very simple introduction to the word Atma, and we will just say it is the immortal, invisible, inner essence. Okay? Immortal. Immortal means what? It doesn't die. So it never dies. That is the meaning of immortal, right? So this Atma, it never dies. Then inner. Inner means it is not outside. So what is the outside? For example, skin. The skin on the hand. That is outside. And that is why you can see it, right? But this Atma is inner. It is something within, let us say. Now, not only is it within, it is invisible. So because inner, you can even say heart is inner, right? Heart is an organ, it is inner. But if you cut open the body, you can see the heart. But this Atma, even if you cut open the body, you cannot see. And it is an essence. So it is an inherent, permeating, substratum. It is Atma. So this inner and invisible go together. So this is a very simple definition of Atma, and as we progress, this definition is going to advance and modify. Okay, so this Atma, we'll come back to what is Atma in a proper way later. This Atma is Satyam. What is Satyam? That we will see now. So Satyam and Mithya are 2 words that go together. We have to understand them together. Okay, so today we will try to understand this in 4 steps and with the help of an example. Okay, so step 1. Imagine that there is a pot in front of you. Okay, our favorite Vedanta example of the clay pot. So this clay pot example, you're going to come across again and again and again everywhere. So we will use our clay pot example. So imagine that there is a pot in front of you and it is made out of clay. Okay, so now I can make the statement, there is a pot here. Yes or no? So you can, I think you have a thumbs up option. So if you agree with the statement, you can just send the thumbs up option. So there is a pot. Is this an okay statement to make? Okay. Right. So I'm seeing some thumbs up. Right. So this is an okay statement for everybody, right? That there is a pot. Now we move to the second step. In the second step, I'm going to introduce another thing and I'm going to say there is not just pot, but there is also clay of the pot. Okay, so there is pot and there is clay of the pot. I've introduced a new thing. Is this also okay to say? Right? So there is pot and clay of the pot. Okay. Now we'll move to the third step. Now I'm going to tell you that clay is actually a superior reality compared to the pot. Why? Because the clay is there before the pot, clay is there when the pot is there, and clay is there even after the pot breaks. So clay is a superior reality as compared to the pot. Is this okay so far? Right? Now, when I had said there is a pot, and if I ask you, does this pot have some weight? Can you hold this pot in your hand? What will you say? Can you hold the pot? Yes. Does this pot have some weight? Yes, it does. Now, in the third step, what we are going to say, it is actually not the pot which has the weight. It is actually not pot that you are holding. What you are holding is clay. Clay alone you are holding. Clay alone has the weight. Is this okay? Right? Is it like there is the weight of the clay plus some additional weight of the pot? Is it like that? No, right? Obviously not. There is something called clay, and that clay has the weight. That clay is the thing that you hold in your hand. And that clay is what has the weight and has all the attributes. That clay permeates through and through the pot, and it is a higher reality than the pot, right? Now we come to the fourth stage, and I'm going to tell you that actually there is no such thing called pot. What is there is only clay. What is finally pot? Pot is just a name given to the shape of clay. So pot is nothing but a shape of the clay to which we have given a certain name and which has some certain transactional value because you can put some water in it and use it. So other than this nama rupa, we call it. Nama rupa means name and form. So other than nama rupa, it has no substantial existence. So what you call pot is only a notional existence. What is the true substance? The true substance is clay alone. So really speaking, there is no such thing, no such substance called pot. There is only clay. And in other words, what can you say? That this pot depends on clay for its existence. Pot depends on clay for its existence. This is a very, very, very important statement. Okay, this is the crux of Vedanta. This is the most crucial topic. So pay attention. If we had a Vedanta exam, I would tell you to star mark this topic. That is how important this is. Okay, so pot is dependent on clay for its existence. Pot borrows its existence from clay. If clay is not there, can pot be there? No, right? Suppose I tell you, give me some clay, but I don't want pot. You can do that, right? You can make a different shape with the clay, or you can just give me a lump of clay. And you can tell, here is clay, but this is not a pot. And that's okay. But suppose I tell you, give me the pot, but keep the clay. Is that possible? I want the pot, but you keep the clay. Not possible, right? Because pot cannot exist independently without the clay. And therefore, this pot is not a real existence. It is a notional existence. So the only substantial thing there is clay. And that is why clay is satyam and pot is mithya. Okay, clay is satyam. Why? Because it has independent existence. And pot is mithya because it has dependent or borrowed existence. Understand this very carefully. We are not saying that pot doesn't exist. We are saying pot has borrowed existence. It cannot exist by itself. It depends on clay for its existence. And this is the main point. This is the relationship of satyam and mithya. Mithya means that which is not independent existence. It has dependent existence. So here I have given the example of table, but same thing for clay. Okay, so mithya is dependent existence, satyam is independent existence. And this we have to remember. And because it is independently existing, it pre-exists the pot, right? The clay is there before the pot was made. And if the pot breaks, still clay is there. So the clay doesn't depend on pot for existence, but pot definitely depends on the clay for its existence. Therefore, pot is mithya and clay is satyam. Now you can replace clay and pot with any number of examples. You can take the gold and the bangle. You can take the table and wood. You can take the cotton shirt and the cotton thread, any number of examples. Okay, so now I'll just go over some of these points. So they are the same points, what I have discussed. And here the example of table and wood is given. So if you ask, what is the truth of the table? What is the reality of this table? There's actually no substance called table. The only substance is wood. And table is only a shape, is only a name given to a particular shape. If the shape was different, you will call it window. If it is something else, you will call it chair. But what is the main substance? Substance is wood alone. And so this table is nothing but Nama Rupa, name and form existence. Exists only as name and form, a notional, superficial existence. And this Nama Rupa cannot exist separately or independently. Separately means you cannot have pot somewhere and clay somewhere, right? They are actually one and the same. They are in the same clay, right? So this Nama Rupa cannot be independently available outside the pot. The pot has borrowed or dependent existence. Nama Rupa can be many, but substance is only one. Okay, if you take the example of wood, you can have many Nama Rupa, right? You can have chair, table, window, something else. The Nama Rupas are many, but what is the substance of all of that? Only one, and that substance is wood. So substance has independent existence. Even if Nama Rupa is destroyed, substance is still there. It still exists. And that is why Mithya is dependent existence and Satyam is independent existence. And now what was the statement the teacher had made? He said, Atma Satyam Tadanyat Sarvam Mithyeti. So this Atma is Satyam. Atma is independently existent. And everything else in the world has borrowed existence from Atma. So the whole world that we see, the entire Jagat, the entire universe, all of that is Mithya. Mithya means it has borrowed existence from Atma. It is dependently existent on Atma. Okay, the whole creation, whole world. The relationship between Atma and universe is the same relationship between clay and pot. Okay, so that is why author says Atma Satyam Tadanyat. Everything else is Mithya. Okay, now we can stop for questions. This is a very important topic and it seems very simple. But if you understand this fully, then you have understood Vedanta fully. So take some time and think deeply on this. Okay. The more deeper you think on this, actually you'll realize that the topic is quite profound, not as superficial as it appears.
Medhaji, when it comes to this fact, Atma Satyam, I have been practicing yoga under Raviji's guidance for last 1 year. I mean, I'm being very practical to you. I'm actually a cabin crew. So when we go on board and we fly and we have all kinds of customers around us, all kinds of, people, I most of the time remind myself, Atma Satyam. I always say that whenever I get emotionally driven, I try to come back to my intellect and I try to make that difference. But the problem, not problem, let's say the challenge here right now is unmanifested state. So when it comes to things which are not lively according to our intellectual capacity, a wood, a wall, all these things, that's where I feel challenges. How can I call that Brahman?
How can you call what Brahman?
Like how can I remember that everything is Brahman itself?
You have to remind yourself.
Okay.
That's the only way. And more Shravanam, more Mananam, more Nididhyasana. And as for the unmanifest state, you have to give it more time. That is a topic that actually takes many people a lot of time to understand, and that is normal. So if you're not understanding, you should be happy. You're on track.
Medhaji, this example of wooden table and other objects made of wood, what happens if it is destroyed by fire?
Yeah, all examples in Vedanta are limited, just to prove one particular point. If we go too much in a different direction, then the example ceases to work. So finally, you have to remember that wood and the table, wood is also very much mithya. It is just an example just to convey the relationship between table and wood. And to that extent only we take the example. If we go deeper, then the example collapses.
Okay, thank you.
Medhaji,
Is not to disprove Vedanta or not to challenge Vedanta. The point is to understand the point, right? So that is why we take it till the extent required.
Medhaji,
Yeah. So
yeah, Medhaji, I just joined today and I have seen your previous videos. My question is the Brahman that you were talking earlier. Is this Atma and Brahman the same thing you are talking of, or is it something different?
no, they are same. Two words for the same thing. The difference, why there are two words, we will see later.
Okay, so in the earlier videos, as you say, that Brahman it doesn't have a birth date, nor it has the expiry date, and it is Amar. So you mean to say there are crores and crores of Atmas in this world?
No, there is only one.
No, our is Atma is in oneself. So
No.
mine is one Atma, yours is another Atma. Is it
No. Atma is only one. So the statement is not Atma is in me. The statement is I am in Atma. Atma is like space. Space is a good example.
Okay.
So if you ask the question, is the pot in space or is there space inside the pot?
Pot in the space. I don't know. Space in the pot.
Yeah, you'll have to wait. So all these things are covered much later. But for now, remember, Atma is only one. It is not that each person has individual Atmas. The individuals are called Jivatma. That Jivatma is different from Atma, and that we will see later.
Okay. Thank you, Medaji.
So Medhaji, here when the author says Tattva Vivekah ka Atma Satyam Tadanyat Sarvam Mithyeti, so is the author not talking of two things in Advaita, Atma and Satyam and Mithya? Or
But
is it
actually,
only at the beginning?
When we discussed the 4 steps, what was the 4th step finally? What did we say? We said actually there's no such thing called pot. What is there is just clay, right? So is there actually two things called Satyam and Mithya? Can you ever separate them? Can you ever
No.
say there are two things?
No.
The Mithya is not a separate thing from Satyam, and therefore there are no two things. There is only one thing. But because we have focused on the wrong thing, we tend to focus more on the shape, on the Nama Rupa. And that is where the problems start. The more differences we see, the more problems we will have.
Yes.
There's actually no two things. There's only one thing. But unfortunately, our vision is on the wrong thing. And that is why we think there are many things.
Yes. Thank you.
Om Medaji.
Yeah.
Om Medaji.
Yes.
Yeah. It's just like ocean and water.
Yes. Like ocean and water.
Water.
You can use any example. Even ocean
Yeah.
and water is the same category as clay and pot.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah. So somebody had raised the hand, I think Lata.
Yeah, Mehtaji, most of the questions got answered like this itself. So, I mean, even I had the same thing. Now, if you say clay is a form like Atma, we're giving a context. Clay is something that we can see and we can feel, but Atma is something that we cannot see or feel.
Yeah.
Yeah, so some of the answers got answered just like that. Thanks.
It is just for example, because there is no other way to understand Atma, because it is not something you can see, not something you can touch or feel or experience or anything really, right? It is just beyond perception, beyond experience, beyond everything. And how do you go about understanding this? Only with the help of certain Laukika examples. And of course, all those examples will be limited. You can never find a perfect example.
Oh, ma'am, this said Amit. Ma'am, like you just said, it was a very good example. Like you said, we are living in Atma, but Atma is not living in us. So to understand it, should we understand like fish is living in ocean, or should we understand like quantum physics says that everything is conscious and we are living in a conscious energy? So how to understand this? Because this is very interesting and very mind.
When you say we are living, who is we?
So like you said, Jivatma.
Who is that Jivatma?
So Jivatma is myself, which consists of consciousness, mind, body.
As long as you think of yourself as Jivatma, you cannot think of yourself as Atma. It's one or the other. So the moment you say that, do I think of myself as this? You're still thinking of myself. And that is the problem.
So ma'am, what does incarnates, like we have heard about incarnation and all. So is it Jivatma or Atma?
It's Jivatma. And as long till now, we have all believed and we have all been conditioned to believe that I am this Jiva, I am this individual, I have this body, I have this mind, and I have these thoughts. And all of this belong to Jiva. And as long as you claim those as myself, till then you cannot claim that I am Atma. And there lies the problem. And it is a very deep-rooted condition. In fact, this is the whole process we are doing, no? Trying to decondition, and it will take time. But this is the crux of the problem. So when you say that, am I in Atma? Who is the I? Because there is only one I, and that I is Atma. And if you think you are Jivatma, now there are two things. There's Jivatma and there's Atma. And that is a problem, right?
So how to get this deep inside ourselves that we are not actually Jivatma, we are Atma. Because entire
More
word we
Shravanam,
see,
more Mananam, more Nididhyasanam.
It was explained with the sun, mirror, and image.
Yes.
Sun is like Atma, Brahma. Mirror is like body. Image is like Jivatma.
now what is the third one you said, Nidhi?
Sun, mirror, image. Atma, body, Jivatma.
No. Sharanam,
Shravanam,
Mananam.
Mananam, and Nididhyasanam.
What is that?
That is the assimilation of the knowledge. Shravanam is listening to the knowledge and getting the knowledge. Mananam is thinking about the knowledge, clearing your doubts. Nididhyasanam is assimilating the knowledge.
Okay.
So
Thank
this
you so
question of yours about Jiva and Jivatma and Atma, it's like the pot space and the space outside. So is the pot in space or is there space in the pot? And the answer is, there are no two spaces. Space is only one, right? Can you ever divide space? Can you ever break space? If you take a knife and you cut, can you cut space into two?
No.
No, right? So what we call as pot space is only a notional understanding that there is a pot and there's some space inside the pot, and I call that as pot space. But is that space actually separate from the space, the whole space? No, because space can never be broken. What we call inside and outside is only a notional understanding, right? And that notion exists only as long as the pot is there. If you break the pot, can you say this space merged with that space? No, because they were never broken. They were never two separate things for there to have been a merger. But because the walls of the pot were there, we thought that there are two spaces. But that is just a notional understanding. It is not a real thing. There is no real division of space. Space is only one. Only in our understanding, in our mind, we have broken space into two. And that is why we say inside and outside. But really, there is no inside and outside. If you just simply remove the pot, space is one. And that is the understanding. As long as you think you are pot space, you will think yourself different from the whole space. But really speaking, there is no difference. This pot space and that space, they're all the same space.
So this leads to one last question. So why there is such a fear of losing the individuality?
Simply fear. It is because of the fear of the unknown. If you lose individuality, most people think what happens is nothingness. But we know it is not nothingness. It is the opposite. It is everythingness.
It's also the attachment to that identity, you know.
The attachment also. The attachment to the identity makes you fearful of losing that identity.
Medaji, the notion of space and time and mass all are in Atman, right?
Notion of space and?
That means space itself is a notion.
Yes, space.
It's an example.
It's an example. Space, in the example, space is treated like Atma. But as you have pointed out, space is not Atma. When we look at the final analysis, space and Atma are two different things. But for example's sake, space is the closest thing we have to Atma. If I ask you the question, where does space end? Can there be any answer? Do we know the answer? What is the ending of space? What is there beyond space? Is there anything? Do we know? For us, space is as good as being infinite, right? Unlimited. Because we know that everything exists in space. Can there be something outside space?
Atman,
Something that is outside space.
Atman is
That
beyond
also
space.
requires space, no? To be there.
The space is contained in Atman.
Hmm?
Space, time, everything appears in Atman, of supreme consciousness.
Yes. But that comes much later. All of those are, we will see in detail much. Okay, so all of those are little advanced topics and you need,
Ma'am, I have one question.
yeah.
Ma'am, who are you?
Who am I?
That is what we're trying to answer, right? That is the whole point of
Learn.
this pursuit.
Medaji, Ayush joined like this week. So I think his question is more literal, like who are you? Like, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I could. Is that the question, Ayush?
No, that's not the question. I was just asking who are you, not your introduction about your past or your qualifications, nothing. I was just asking about who are you. Can you explain? I'm having doubt. Someone has asked me in my past, so I was just want a particular answer.
Okay. So that is an answer that cannot be explained in one class. In 5 minutes or one class, it cannot be explained. It takes months and years to answer and understand the answer also. So this is what we are doing. That is why the whole classes, all of this thing is there. The whole point of Vedanta is the answer to who am I? And so you have to just keep coming.
Just say I am Brahma also.
Yes, but you can tell the answer, I am Brahman, but Brahman is just another word right now, right? For you, isn't it?
To assimilate, to realize.
You have to know what is Brahman. Then the assimilation happens.
Medaji, I have one question. Even after realizing the true nature of Atman pervading in everything, no other Nama Rupa or just insignificant, the personal preferences remain. I may like tea, you may like coffee. Even the Jnani seem to have personal preferences in the bodily form.
Yes.
Why is that?
The question.
Personal preferences might remain, but there won't be any dependencies or any kind of emotional disturbances if it's available or not available.
One thing we have to remember is that at moksha, the world doesn't vanish. Your body doesn't vanish. Your mind doesn't vanish. Everything is as it was. Okay. Everything is still there. It is just that now your perception, your understanding has shifted. You no longer see yourself as something separate from creation. You know, you understand the nature of things. But that doesn't mean that the leaf is not going to be green anymore. That doesn't mean the water is not going to have waves anymore. All those things will still continue. And as long as you have a mind, thoughts will continue. And some of those thoughts will be preferences.
Okay. Thank you.
It could also, Vedaji, it could also be the vasanas of that particular person expressing.
You have to wait some more for those answers. Okay, we'll stop now and we'll continue in the next class. We'll end with Purnamada. Om
Purnamada
Purnamidam
Purnamudachyate Purnamadaya Shanti Shanti Shanti
Yo Namaha Hari Om.
Hariyo Namah. Hariyo.
Tat Sat.
Shivaya.
Thank you so much.
Om Namah
Namah
Shivaya.
Shivaya.
Thank you so
Mataji.
much. So much.
Thank you,
For
Mataji.
a lovely class today. Yeah.
Om Namo Shivaya. Thank you very much, Medaji.
Thank you, Mehtaji.
Thank you, ma'am.